M.
Hey, I'm Robin Manac. Thank you. It was nice meeting you this
Nice
morning.
meeting you too.
Hey, let's have another moment of silence, kind of get me out of the way here for a second. Thank you. My first sponsor was an example of taking that moment. He said it was so he would get out of his head and maybe God would use him as a vessel. And I was thinking about GRCNA, and my first experience with GRCNA was actually before my clean day. And I was there with that first sponsor, and he was kind of in this corner room area that was next to another room, and Seamus was there. And I remember Bubba was there, and this guy had long red hair all the way down to his hip, and that was my first experience of GRCNA. And I thought it was like being at Disney World. If you've ever gone to Disney World for the first time, especially as a kid, it's like everything is just like so amazing and so overwhelming, and you're just sitting there going, wow, I can't believe that. And I remember just so many people on that first time that they circled up after that main speaker meeting, I was just so overwhelmed. And it's just something that's infectious. And I want to thank all the folks that are here that are of service. It's an amazing opportunity to come. What we do is celebrate recovery at a convention, but most importantly is that when I was growing up, I lived in California. And some of you will say, well, okay, that explains it. You know, the land of fruits and nuts. But all my mom's side of the family was in Georgia. So we would drive out here every year for summer and spend a lot of time here. And when I'd get here during the summer, the family would get together, and it was all gathered at time. And I thought that's just what you all did here in Georgia. I just thought, man, that's the coolest thing, is that family gathers together. And what I found out, it was my mom was one of 4 sisters. It was because she was coming into town that the family gathered. And it was when I moved here, and it's been 30 years now, when I moved here and found out that's really not what happened all the time. The family didn't gather. What I have found out, though, is that this family gathers. The Georgia Regional Convention of Narcotics Anonymous and Narcotics Anonymous as a whole, we gather. And so when I come here for the annual event of GRCNA or go to any other event, it's like being at a family reunion. And I got to see guys that I met 25 years ago for the first time. And then I get to meet new people that while we don't know each other, we know each other. Okay? And I got to meet Wade for the first time, and we got the little opportunity to share, and it is just so cool because we get here, and sometimes, I don't know about y'all, but sometimes I get into the situation where I can be in a room full of people, even after multiple years of recovery, and still feel all alone.
Come on now.
But when I get here into this family environment, and you see the smiles, when actually people look at you and they crack that smile because they see you. I don't know if they're laughing at me or not, but it doesn't matter because it makes me feel welcome that I'm here. I just want to say welcome. If this is your first convention, welcome. What an awesome opportunity. If you're new to recover, just remember what everybody says at every meeting. Keep coming back. Because when I remember my first meeting, that's all I remember. There's 2 big jokers jumping off a brick wall before the meeting before the meeting, and giving me a hug. And where I came from, men didn't hug each other unless they wanted something. And they didn't want nothing. They just wanted me to feel welcome. And so I want to welcome whoever's here for the first time. And those that are traveling, I know that you've come from different ways. Thanks for being here, because we're all part of this family of Narcotics Anonymous. And I got the call a couple of days ago. One of my sponsor brothers had a conflict come up. So don't take this the wrong way. You got second fiddle. There was somebody else. But when I got the call, or actually it was a text, one of the things I learned early on in recovery is that if you're asked to be of service, what does it say on the back of our medallions? My gratitude speaks when I care and share with others in any way. And I am grateful for what this fellowship did to save my life. Not only to save my life, but teach me a new way to live. You know, isn't that what our message is? That any addict stop using, lose the desire to use, and find a new way to live. So by coming around for all these years, you guys, as a whole, have taught me this new way of life. So when I got that text, it was like, I have a lot. What I do for a living, I do a lot of talking and a lot of writing. But my response to the person that asked me was really short, sweet, to the point. It said, sure. And the point of the matter is I'm very grateful. I love GRCNA specifically. Not to go into a bunch of stuff, but I had the opportunity to be of service with GRCNA for a few years, and it's one of those things when you get to be of service in that capacity, you understand what goes on behind the scenes. So there's a lot of things that are going on. If you haven't ever served at the Georgia Regional Convention, take an opportunity, if you get the opportunity and have the time, to get involved. There's a whole lot more to it than just being here for a couple of days. And so I appreciate those that are here and that are working with the committee and with the board. And because of my experience with that, it's like you don't get it out of your blood. And when he told me what the topic was, it was about lives guided by integrity. And I'm thinking, wow, I don't know anything about that. And when my wife and I were sharing in the kitchen, she says, well, that's why I married you. And I kind of teared up a little bit about that. To me, integrity. Talking about integrity is like talking about humility. If you talk about it, you probably don't got it.
That's right.
Right?
That's right.
So when I think about it, and then one of the things that I was taught early on in recovery is that I needed to have some outside literature to go along with my NA literature, and it was called a dictionary. And so I wanted to go ahead and look exactly, because I understand what integrity is, and when people ask me about that, I usually talk about doing the right thing and doing the right thing when nobody's looking. That's a short version of integrity, but when I actually looked up the meaning, it talked about, living honestly. But then it goes on to talk about a strict adherence to moral, or what we know as spiritual principles. And it's like, well, I know a little bit about that. I know a little bit about that. Because when I got here, and it says why we're here, is that when we lied, cheated, and stole, we degraded ourselves in our own lives. And it talks about the personality change is what we really needed. I didn't have integrity when I got here. I had integrity when I walked in the front door because I know I needed help. That was getting to the point of being honest. And that was my first opportunity being honest, is that mission to saying, I can't do this anymore. So if we're here because we just got to the end of the road, what does it says? When we became beaten, we became willing, right? And so if you've been beaten and you are willing, that's that first aspect of integrity, of being honest, that I'm here, I need help, right? So I knew a little bit about it when I got here, but I didn't really understand the concept of living a life with strict adherence or guidance with principles. And so when I think about this topic, living guided by integrity, what strikes me is that I'm living a life that's guided by spiritual principles. And so I find it interesting, and if I say anything to offend you, it's not intended to offend you, but you might need to call your sponsor. Speak the truth. I understand that when I hear something that somebody says and I get offended, it's usually because it's stepping on my toes. And if there's something that you're doing that I don't like, it's probably because I do it. And so if I say something, but I find it very interesting that we say that we're members of a 12-step fellowship, but I've got, I don't know, I think 8 or 9 guys that have given me an opportunity to be involved in their life as a sponsor. And out of those 8 or 9 guys, there might be 1 or 2, maybe 3 that have actually went through all the 12 steps and the traditions and talked about concepts. And I'm talking about guys with multiple years of recovery. And so I'm not here judging. I'm just here saying. I find it interesting that we call ourselves a member of a spiritual program that's called the 12-Step Fellowship. And my understanding of the 12 steps is to introduce me to these spiritual principles that this integrity life is supposed to be talking about, is living a life guided by integrity, is living a life guided by spiritual principles. And so what I would like to speak with, and I don't think we have a whole lot of time, but quickly, is that what I have come to understand about living by spiritual principles. I had a situation come up in my work this past year, and it ended up costing out of pocket $5,000. Wow. And it was one of those things where there was a situation that was created that if we had just taken a different position, it wouldn't have cost $5,000. And when I was speaking with somebody directly, it's one of those things when we get into recovery and you're trying to live this life guided by spiritual principles. You ever hear that story of George Washington when we were kids? that I cannot tell a lie. Yes, I cut down the tree. I've gotten to a point in my life where it's hard when my wife looks at me and asks me a direct question. I can't lie. It's tough when that, how does this look? Question comes along. And that's the easy part, but when it's the hard part is when you're asked that question and it's going to cost you $5,000. And so the point of the matter is that I remember coming out of the grocery store when my kids were young, and I was pushing the cart up to the car, and I got my daughter and my son, and their mom had died, and we got involved with my present wife, and we got married. We're actually celebrating 12-year anniversary on Sunday.
Congratulations.
So she wasn't with us, so I don't know if it was before I got remarried or during that transition time, but I just remember my kids were young, and I was putting the groceries in, and there was something in the front basket that I hadn't paid for. And of course, when we talk about honesty in the first step, and it says more than just cash register honesty, and this is maybe an example of that, but I say, you guys, and I got them buckled into the car and all that kind of stuff, and I started walking back to the store, and they said, where are you going, Dad? And I said, I didn't pay for this, I need to go back in. And so I went back in because it hadn't gotten put in the bags, and it was something, obviously, it was sitting in that, that top part of the buggy. And I'm not saying that to pat myself on the back. What I'm saying is that we were at an event probably a month or two later, and my son was with me, and the question was asked, when have you ever experienced a situation about honesty and integrity? And this little toddler young fellow said, he raises his hand, and we're in with a bunch of men. I was like, uh-oh, what's he going to say now? And he described the situation at the grocery store. What impacted me is that I didn't focus on teaching them that lesson by sitting them down and going through the process and what it means and all that stuff. We just lived by example. And that example impacted him to where when somebody asked him that question, he shared that experience. And in my experience in these rooms, what I have learned about applying spiritual principles in my life has come by watching you. And watching the guys that have been here, and watching the ladies that have been here, and watching folks that come after me that get on fire. Because I can tell you, it doesn't matter how much time I have. It matters about what am I doing today. And my sponsor's here, and thank you, and I love you. But we have been through some pain with a sponsor brother, or a former sponsor brother some years ago. He and I had the same clean time. And he got to a point in his recovery where he said, I ain't going to keep going to them meetings. Because he was the guy with the most clean time in the meeting. And what he said was that, I'm not hearing anything. I'm not getting anything. I'm hearing these yahoos say the same thing over and over, these paper signers, these whatever. And I'm sorry, and I heard the story, and I can relate, because sometimes I don't want to be in the meetings either. Because sometimes I'm sitting there trying to practice that love, tolerance, and all that, those spiritual principles when somebody's sharing, and they're either crossing the line or not having a clear message of recovery, and where do you stand up and you stop them in the middle of their discussions like my grand sponsor used to do, or do you get with them after all that conflict that some of you all have already experienced. And so I'm thinking about that opportunity in that context, about practicing the purpose of integrity, but I was talking about the sponsor brother, and so I was relating at times. So he quit going to meetings. And we all know what happens when some of us quit going to meetings.
Mm-hmm. Too well.
It says in integrity is strict adherence to living by principles. Mm-hmm. And when we get to that point where we are not strictly adhering to that lifestyle, I don't care how many years of recovery you have. And I don't know that he's been able to put any clean time together. And I've got 22 years clean now, and that was when he had 18 years clean. Mm-hmm. So that's 4 years ago. I don't know how many people we have buried. because of the inability to strictly adhere to a life of principle, does that mean that I am completely honest all the time? If I told you that, I would be a liar. Does that mean that I'm applying the principle of acceptance in all my affairs? One of my favorite sayings, acceptance doesn't mean like. But if I've truly accepted something, I'm not trying to manipulate it. I can't say that because I like to fix, manage, and control. I don't know about you guys. I've learned that about myself through the step process, that I have certain tendencies, and that's one of the things. And why do I get angry? Is because you do something that I don't like, or you're not doing something I want you to do. Fix, manage, and control. And so when I think about, no, it's not about making it perfect. You know, what the program says is this is a program based on, progress, not perfection. This is a program that we have a strict adherence to these spiritual principles. So what does that mean? Is that when I've got that situation that came up about having to come out of pocket $5,000 for a situation that I didn't necessarily cause, it was a direct result of somebody else that was affiliated with my office. But the bottom line is practicing integrity and being honest about it and having that conversation when that guy says, well, what is it that I can do? I had to answer him honestly because I knew that I had to go home and look myself in the mirror. Because I can fix, manage, and control in a heartbeat. I can tell you this, and this is just my opinion. I don't believe that the character defects that I deal with and I live with are removed. I believe that God removes my shortcomings, and that's my tendency to act out on those character defects, but I think I'm hardwired a certain way. And there are times when the thoughts that come into my head without permission. And there's some things that I react to in a heartbeat, such as when my wife and I get into a dispute, and it's not going the way I want to, I can go be that guy that I don't want to be anymore. The strict adherence to spiritual principles in that case is that my wife and I have started doing something together. We're starting to do some spiritual time together at least once a week on a Friday night. And we're reading through a book. It's kind of funny. It's the book is called What Did You Expect? And it's about marriage. And sometimes I think that we ought to write a book. We already have materials that says, what did you expect when you come to recovery? That all of a sudden that everything's going to be peachy and rosy and you're going to get your spouse back, you're going to get your kids back. No. It says what? Ours is a message of hope and a promise of freedom. And so we're reading through this book, and the first thing it says, hey man, you live in a fallen world. You live in a world of chaos, and you are somebody who's imperfect, and you're married to somebody who's imperfect. Get over it. It's like a slap in the face. Acceptance doesn't mean like. You mean I'm never going to be perfect? You know, I'm that egomaniac with low self-esteem, and it talks about that, and I was, when we talked about these steps and these principles, when I thought about the principle of integrity through sponsorship, that's one of the principles that is behind the fifth step. And in the basic text, when I was reading through early on in my recovery, there's something that really jumped out at me out of the fifth step, and I want to read it to you. Addicts tend to live secret lives. For many years, we covered low self-esteem by hiding behind phony images that we hoped would fool people. Unfortunately, we fooled ourselves more than anyone. Although we often appeared attractive and confident on the outside, we were really hiding a shaky, insecure person on the inside. The masks have to go. And I think about the application of integrity in that as being real. Is like when my grand sponsor said, Rob, the short version of applying these steps in your life is just do right. Just do right. It was almost like the Nike commercial. Just do it. Just do right. When I think about when I got here and I felt like that shaky, insecure person that when I lied, cheated, and stole, I degraded myself in my own eyes, and I needed that personality change. And I think that the definition of recovery is an act of change in ideas and attitudes, and I'm thinking about the masks have to go. The application of these spiritual principles changes me from that person to being somebody who has been molded by these spiritual principles, that when they're facing with a life choice, they're guided by that integrity of a strict adherence to a lifestyle that I may not necessarily, because what does it say in our literature about addicts and being clean? It says it's an abnormal state. I'm already used to doing something that I don't want to do, and that's not used. So understanding that sometimes when I'm having to just do right doesn't mean that I want to do it. I certainly tell you that I didn't have the money in the firm to be able to write that check. But we wrote it anyway because it was the right thing to do. And God's good because we're being reimbursed from the party that ultimately was responsible for the mess in the first place. And that was by choice, not because I had to go after them. God's good. And sometimes it's not always good. Sometimes I don't get the benefit of somebody practicing some principles. Because that's the nice thing about this fellowship, is that I get surrounded by other people that are practicing principles. It's pretty amazing. But not all of us are here practicing principles. So when I think about honesty and acceptance in the first step, my sponsor is teaching me and has taught me through the application of these principles and these steps, how I can apply them. I remember my sponsor saying, Rob, it's not just going through the worksheets and the workbooks. And I remember when I was first getting clean, we had those sheets. And then we got the step working guide, and now I'm reading in the car that we're going to get another step working guide for those who've been around for a while. And my grand sponsor used to just go through the basic text. There's all different ways and so forth, but it doesn't matter how. It's a matter of learning the principles and understanding. So when I think about honesty and acceptance in the first step, he was like teaching on this situation. So I applied that in that situation, is that I acknowledged that this thing was eating my lunch. I was pissed off. I was upset because this situation was created outside of something that I had control over, and it was going to have an impact. It was causing my life to be unmanageable because I didn't know if I was going to be able to make payroll. I don't know about you. You can apply any other situation in your life, what you're going through, is that first step, the honesty and acceptance, is it is what it is. That's what's causing my life to be unmanageable, and that opens the door for the rest of the process. What my sponsor has taught me is that there's that concept of surrender. A lot of us talk about surrender being a spiritual principle, and I believe that it is, but I also believe it's a byproduct. This is what he's taught me. It's a byproduct of me being honest and accepting in the first step. So when I got to that point and I just surrendered that this situation was out of my control, I just need to get into the solution. That opened the door for the hope shot in the second step. And I came to believe that the God of my understanding was going to restore this situation to some sanity. Which then gave me to the third step in the faith process, that if I trust the process, and I turn my will and my life, turn this situation over to the God of my understanding, and just trust the process, then I'll get to the solution. I don't know what that solution was going to be. And it took several months to get through there. And I'm using this example because it's the most recent example, other than some other things in my personal life, that really shows what we're talking about when we live in a life guided by integrity. And then I got to the fourth step, and I had to make that list of what am I willing to live with and what am I not willing to live with. And what I was willing to live with was to do the right thing even when it was going to hurt. Because I didn't want any other consequences as a result. Because you know what happens when we lie. Then you have to keep up with that lie. And then when you lie on top of a lie and on top of a lie, then you have to remember what lies you told that get out of that. And when it started, it was just easy to just say, hey, you're right. This is what we need to do. And here we go. And the fifth step, in that integrity part is when I talk about it with my sponsor and when I talk about it with God of my understanding. But most importantly, let me not say most, but just as importantly, one of my sponsors taught me in early on in recovery is that the step process is the denial buster. And he told me denial stood for don't even know I'm lying. And my problem is that I look at life through rose-colored glasses. I see it through Rob vision. James sees it through James' vision, and James' vision sometimes will help Rob vision because I'm looking at Rob's stuff. And there might be something over here out of Rob's vision. And that's the denial buster of the step processes. And when I get to that fifth step, and my sponsor says, well, you might want to look at this. Or have you thought about that? So when I'm taking it through the situation, I'll get to this process, there might be some suggestions. I remember early on in recovery, I was going through some issues with the IRS, and I had all of a sudden this light bulb moment that somebody in my life, in sponsorship, had talked about having this IRS issue, and I was able to call him up and say, how did you get through that? And he walked me through his process. That's what the fifth step is all about, is when I get to that point and I can ask for help, and I can be open-minded enough to receive it from the experience, strength, and hope of y'all in the fellowship who's already been through it. I know that James has been sharing about some stuff that he's been through this past year. But I guarantee you there's other people in the fellowship that's already walked through that path. You know, I remember when the mother of my children died as a result of active addiction back in 2006. I had a bunch of people from Narcotics Anonymous like take me under their wings and under their arm and help with my kids and all that kind of stuff. 6 months later, one of the guys that I sponsor, he lost his wife. Guess what? I was able to be empathetic and be there for him. And then 6 months after that, we had a sponsor brother whose wife was killed in a car accident. It's not to be unexpected that when we go through stuff, what we learn from that experience, we give it away. We can't keep what we have unless we give it away, right? So we get to that sixth step in this situation, and you need to let me know how much time we got, but we get to that willingness part, is that when I make my list of what I'm willing to live with and what I'm not willing to live with, right? The fifth step that I talk about, and I'm getting to that point of saying, you know, okay, your response, this is what's going on. And that sixth step is I become entirely ready to get into the solution. And we talk about this a lot, is that there's a lot of times is that when we get our list and what am I willing to live with and what I'm not willing to live with, and you're not willing, you might as well just forget it. You know, what does it talk about in our literature that we can pray over people and we can basically beat them? But I don't know about y'all, but you know, it took me 10 years to get to these rooms. There was a lot of people that prayed over me. There was a lot of people that wanted me to get clean long before the time that I did. It wasn't until I got, he says, when we began beaten, we become what, willing? Yeah. Sixth step. So when I'm dealing with a life situation and living by a life guided by integrity and getting that willingness, I need to be willing to make a change. I need to be willing to do what's right. And of course, the seventh step is asking for God's help. Because I don't know about y'all, I want to put on the cape of recovery and say, I'm Rob, Captain Recovery, and I'm going to go in and scoop in and save the day. I remember sitting on the front porch calling my sponsor about the situation with my wife and I, and I was like, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to go in and I'm going to fix this. And he said, you know what, Rob, you might want to call and pray to God before you go back in there. And I said, yeah, that's right, that's a good idea. I hung up the phone, I walked right in there, I took my tack like I was going to do, and it just blew up in my face. And I went back outside and I called him on the phone and he goes, did you ask God? And I said, no. So when I become entirely ready and I become willing in the seventh step, I need to get that humility to say, you know what, I need help. I can't, God can, I'll let you. And the eighth step in that is, you know, getting into that justice and making it right. And in that situation with my job is that we got into the spiritual principle of making it right. We had another situation that came up similarly with that, and it was like, it's not my fault, but I'm going to make it right. And the ninth step is the process of making it right. And it says use judgment and discipline, and you know, that's when I call my sponsor to make sure that except for when to do so and injure them or others. And that 10th step is that I continue to take that inventory, and when I'm wrong, promptly admit it. That's the open-mindedness and perseverance. So that means that I need to be aware that I don't care how long in time that you've been here, I don't care how many meetings you've done and how many service commitments you have, is that you still can learn something. One of the things I heard early on in my recovery, 13 years clean, this man, I was new in recovery, he said, you know, Rob, the longer I stay clean, the more I realize I don't know. So if you're getting here, I don't know about y'all, but my experience is that we get in here probably around 3 to 5 years, we got the case of I know it.
That's right.
I've learned everything I need to know about Narcotics Anonymous, and I got this thing down. I know it. I got it. And if you're not doing it my way, you're doing it wrong. I know you guys probably didn't go there. I did. And I've watched others, not necessarily in this room. The 10th step is giving me that open-mindedness and perseverance to understand that I don't have all the answers, that I am looking through Rob's vision, and I need some help. And that 11th step is just huge for me. Praying for the understanding and the knowledge of God's will for me and the power to carry it out. Because I don't know about all that there's a lot of times when I know what I need to do, I'm just not willing. That's right. I need somebody else's help. And it needs to be a God of my understanding. And the people that I surround myself, because I believe God works through people. And that 12th step in the principles of love, tolerance, and service. And we can get into all that, but that's the culmination. And it says having had a spiritual awakening result of these steps. So if I'm wanting the spiritual awakening, whether it's on a life situation or just in general about my personality change, it says as a result of these steps. I remember somebody that had a second, that I was sponsoring that had 4 years clean, and he had a conflict with the God of my understanding. And he goes, Rob, I just don't believe in what you believe. And I said, well, I haven't asked you to believe in what I believe. You have the right to the God of your understanding. The key is get that understanding. And I said, I don't care where you are in the second step. You don't have to have that relationship there. It says it in the 12th step as having had a spiritual awakening as a result of the steps. Let's work through the process. You are where you are. Unfortunately, he walked away and never came back. And so what I want to share with you all is that in that 12th step and having had that spiritual awakening is a result of a strict adherence to living with spiritual principles in your life. And so that's been my experience with trying to live life based on integrity. Thanks for letting me share.
Thanks for sharing. Thank you again, Rob M. Now I'm going to introduce our next speaker, who is Wade R.
Whew. My name is Wade. I'm an addict.
Hey, Wade.
Look to that person to the left and to the right of you. Look at him. Give him a hug.
Yeah, that's right.
Give me a hug. Rob, thank you.
That's right.
Once again, my name is Wade. I'm an addict.
Hey, Wade.
I do that everywhere I go because when I walk into this great fellowship, that's how I was greeted. And that hug got me outside of myself. Because I was so afraid that when I came in here, I wasn't going to be accepted. I'm a very emotional person, so you're liable to see tears at any time. I don't know if I can put much more to what Rob shared about. I really enjoyed that. I came into this fellowship June 21st, 1991. I managed to put together 16 years of recovery and relapse. I went on a 10-year run. My new clean date is January 6, 2016. And I have to keep that in the forefront of my forehead. Because if not, I'm doomed. I am one of these guys that when I walked into these rooms, I had no integrity of whatsoever. Now, I'm also one of these guys that.
Sorry.
That's okay. I was taught when I walked in here, every word that I don't truly understand, get a dictionary. Mm-hmm. Look it up. Because see, we think we know everything. Look, check this out. This is the way I feel. I feel that every member of Narcotics Anonymous could be a millionaire. Think about the things that we did when we was out there in those streets. The hustle that we had to go on to get just one more. Then we come into recovery and we say we can't do. We don't even use an inch, not even an inch of our brain that we used out there. Don't tell me you can't do. I came in here and I was a truck driver. 8 years into recovery, I own my own truck. I'm not trying to brag now. I came in here not owning a home. at 5 years, I was buying my first home. So if we sit down, apply the spiritual principles of this great fellowship, work some steps, learn the traditions, and know and incorporate the 12 concepts of this program, I can almost make a guarantee you can do it too. There are too many people that I know that got PhDs, that got doctorates, that own businesses. And when they came in here, they didn't have a high school diploma. If they can, why can't I? I've been on disability for the last 10 years. The government took my license. So I've been on disability the last 10 years. Check this out. I owned 3 hand car washes in detail shops back in Jersey. And I lost them all when I went back out into the streets. A friend of mine said to me 2 weeks ago that someone they needed a car detail. And I thought about you. Ain't nobody never thought about me when I was out there. You know what I'm saying? So I went and talked to the guy, and he says, yeah, I need a detailer. I need him like today, and I'm going to get back to integrity. and he, oh, Lord have mercy. He said, I need you today. And I said, well, how many cars you got to do? He said, I got 100 cars to do. I was like, wow. I haven't worked in 15 years, physically worked. So I said, yeah, okay. So I went, and that first day was a mother. And in 3 days, I did 6 cars. On the 4th day, it was raining, and the shop wasn't that big, and he had his own workers that were working. And he said, well, Wade, you can't work today, you know, we'll see what tomorrow is like. I said, okay. So when I came back up on Friday, he said, look, and we're gonna redirect some things, because I got another building that we need to use, because this building isn't big enough, blah, 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 blah. I said, okay. You know, I went out already and brought a new vacuum cleaner, pressure washer, and this and that. You know, I spent about $500 in getting myself set up. So on Saturday, some friends of mine, I know the detail, you know, they're like, wait, we're gonna do this. And they came with me, and we got out the car, and he looked, he said, we still haven't figured out what we're going to do. I'm a street guy. Now my head is starting to go. Don't jerk me. You don't know me. So I said, all right, listen, well, pay me for what I've done already. Oh, okay. Look, we need to make a decision on what needs to be done, because, you know, it's okay. On Monday, Monday came, Tuesday came, Wednesday came, Thursday came. I just walked up on the lot, and he's got new workers. So as he approached me, I said, I don't want to hear it. He says, no, let me explain. I said, I don't want to hear it. He said, well, I said, listen, I'm going to tell you exactly what happened. Those 6 specific cars that you had for me to do, you could not do it, or these men could not do it. And you needed someone to do it, and instead of you saying, listen, I need just this done, and having the balls, you tried to con me. And he dropped his head and he walked away. Now, if it had not been for the 12 steps of Narcotics Anonymous, I'd have went off. It truly, truly went off. Because see, I don't know why Troy asked me to speak on this subject. Because I don't at times really believe I have any type of integrity. I am a tactless person. I don't mind telling you how I feel. Let's get back to the word integrity. The quality of being honest and having strong moral principles. That sound like us? I don't think so. Don't sound like me. Moral uprightness. Yeah. The state of being whole and undivided. Like I said, when I walked in the doors of Narcotics Anonymous, the only thing I wanted to do was see that sister sit her pocketbook over on the side so that I can get into it. I wanted to know where that basket was going and who was holding on to it so that we can get together afterwards. Yo, check this out. We meet once a week. We can take that money. We can run to New York. We can break this down. We can flip it. We can break it. Come back, and next Friday we good. That's how much integrity I had when I walked in the door. I wanted to know how I can get my man's wife over there. They just look so nice. They're just all hugged up. She got her head on the shoulder and this and that. That's how much integrity I had. You didn't walk in here brimming with no honesty. Certainly didn't want to change. All I wanted was the pain to stop a little bit so I can function in life. We don't, we are the most honest people when we walk into these doors and we don't even know it. We talk about that we are the most dishonest people when we walk into the door, but it takes an honest person to walk through that back door right now and say, I got a problem, can you help me? As you said. It takes the most honest person here to say, I don't know how to be a husband. I don't know how to be a wife. I don't know how to stop being a hoe. Morals. Right? Morals. It took me 4 years in recovery and get to my fourth step to walk into my boss's office and say, listen, John, I've been stealing. I drive trucks. He said, wait, I know. I said, how you know? He said, every day you come back, something missing off your truck. He said, but one thing I know about you is that you're trying to get your life together. Cool. So what he was telling me to stop stealing. I like you. You're a good guy. But what my mind told me was, get a little slicker. You got 2 kids to take care of. You ain't bringing in that money like you used to. Because let's get honest, when we first come into recovery, if you're like me, I couldn't work 40 hours, so I couldn't bring home a whole check. So I had to steal to support what I was doing. Now I'm in recovery, and I'm trying to work 40 hours, but it's still not making enough money because I'm a hustler also. I'm only bringing home $350 with that straight check, But if I take that straight check and go over to New York and buy 2 8-balls, whack it twice, I got $1,500. If I don't use it all. You know what I'm saying? So now I'm trying to live right. Integrity, moral, honesty. So I'm doing my 4th step and I'm writing and I'm seeing me. And I'm trying to do something about it, but I can't stop stealing. So they used to have this guy ride around behind me in security car. If you were a good thief, I was a B&E guy too. You know what I'm saying? So I watch everything. So I just notice him behind me. I said, okay. So I ride up to the light real slow and let it turn yellow. And just before it turned red, I speed through and he get caught. And I get to the next stop and I got all of my stuff done and sitting on the back and I sold the guy what I'm going to sell him already. And he drives up and we're waving at him. So I get back to the shop one Friday afternoon. Everybody's normally gone. And John is there. And when I see him, I said, John, am I fired? He said, no. I said, oh, phew, wow. I want you to resign. He had more respect for me than I had for him. He said, I want to say this to you. I know you go to that fellowship, and I've watched you from the day one you came. I've been to the job now about 5 years. He said, and I watched you grow. I watched you come in here with such an angry attitude to now you're the shop stewardess for the union. I watched you in the morning be the last guy out of here because you're trying to help others get established and get going. He said, I want you to continue to try to grow up and be that person. It's about 35. I said, wow. I want you to go inside, write a letter of resignation. And when you get ready to find a job, you can always have them call me and I give you a recommendation. Where the hell did that come from? So that's what I did. And I went on and this program started to teach me about spirituality. And it started teaching me about caring about someone else. It didn't matter, and I'm going to say this, if you were black or white, Puerto Rican, Italian, it didn't matter who you were. I don't love anybody in this fellowship because that's my brother. We come from the same area. That's my brother. That's my sister. That's my uncle. That's my grandfather.
Right.
That's my great-grand.
Right.
Ouch. We're in this together. My man talk about family. We're in this together. Because see, when I lost that job, it wasn't the people that were on the outside that rallied behind me and let me know that it's going to be okay. It was that Friday night when I walked into Roselle Park into that meeting, and Kevin came up to me and said, how you feeling? And I said, I'm all right. He said, nah, you're not. I said, how you know? I said, I can see it in your face. suck it up, Buttercup. We're gonna get through this. He didn't say you. He said we. We're gonna get through this. I said, okay. How are we gonna get through this? You gonna help me pay my bills? He said, yeah, how much you need? I was like, oh shit. Maybe if I ask enough people, I can get my car paid off. You know? And people helped me in recovery. And what it showed me was unconditional love. I had an incident where a guy needed to show his truck for his business he was starting. And he paid me $75. And me, in my infinite thinking, so I could take this $75 and go where? Here you go! I could take this $75, it only cost $65 an ounce at that time, take it to New York, I can whack it, flip that for about $350, go back, do it again, I could take care of my family, I can pay some bills. I've been out of work for about a year. Recovery kicked in. I'm in the middle of 1 and 9, which is one of the busiest highways in Jersey, and I make a right turn to go down the street without looking. I go to the Saturday afternoon men's meeting, same brother. Walk in. How you doing, William? Al, no, you're not. And I tell him what I'm getting ready to do. He said, come on, let's go sit in the meeting. We go sit in the meeting's going on, and they open up the meeting, they're calling people and everything, and now it's like, raise your hand. Like, no. Raise your hand. No, man, leave me alone. So he raises his hand. I'm Al, I'm an addict, and Wade's got something to say. Right? You mother. And I tell him what's going on. These are my brothers. We've been going to this meeting, actually started this meeting, we've been going to this meeting for about 4 years now. It's about 50 of us. And after the meeting is over, I'm getting ready to leave, and a brother walks up to me and says, here, man, go home and feed your family. And another brother walked up. Here, man, go home and feed your family. And by the time they were finished, I had $360 in my pocket. By the time I got home, which was a 25-minute ride, my sponsor was standing on my doorstep. He said, I heard what happened. He said, we're going to go and sit down inside, sit down and talk. And we went inside and sat down and talked. My wife made dinner for us. Knock at the door. Here's 3 more brothers. We going to another meeting tonight. No, I'm good, man. I'm good. No, we going to another meeting tonight. So we went to another meeting. If you know anything about New Jersey, Elizabeth is up here, New Brunswick is down here. They're about 40 miles apart. And as I walk into the meeting, people are looking at me, and I'm going, why the hell are they looking at me? Don't y'all know I just want to be left alone? And we're in the meeting, and the meeting starting, the speaker gets finished, and the first thing he says, go ahead, Wade, shit. Like, man, what are y'all trying to do? And I shared where I was at again. By the time I left that meeting, I had another $300 in my pocket. And only one knucklehead walked up to me and said, you know what, I ain't really got this. You got to give it back to me as soon as you can. I said, here you go. That's as soon as I can. I'm not in here for y'all to help, take care of me or anything of that nature. But the unconditional love of this program, for me, it's the most valuable thing of this program. Sunday morning came, and me and my wife were sitting there, and I get a phone call, and it's my aunt. She says, "Come see me." I said, "Connie, I'm touched." She said, No, come see me. And she lived another 30 miles the other way. Her daughter was the one that brought me to my very first meeting. I got to the house, and we got in, and she told my wife and my kids to go in the house. We'll be right back. She got in the car, and "Where are we going, Connie?" She said, "Don't worry about it." She took me straight to the Mac machine, and she got $500 out. You don't know what your higher power got planned for you. But if you work this program to the best of your ability, not your sponsors, not your sponsee brother, sister, your ability, things are unlimited. Man. And I threw all that away after 16 years. After 16 years, I threw it all away. I threw it all in your face. And I choose to work the 12 steps backwards. I didn't care about taking help from nobody else. Certainly wasn't looking for God's will. No. I didn't care about apologizing to anyone once I stole from you. I wasn't going to make up nobody's list. I wanted to live in every character defects that I had in life. No. I wasn't going to sit down and tell you my deepest, darkest secrets. I didn't care about God. I was God. I loved the insanity in my life. So what? My life was unmanageable. Didn't care about no 12 steps, 12 traditions, or concepts. I was losing everything. All because I was being a selfish bastard. And after 10 years, a friend of mine walked up to me and he said, "When are you coming back to meetings?" I had 5 heart attacks. I had 15 stents in my chest and legs. I lost all 3 businesses. Lost the truck. I lost the respect of my wife. I lost the respect of my kids. I was at a family reunion, and my cousin, Stacy, was the first person to bring me to a meeting. She came up to me and she said, "Cuz, time's running out." I said, "Yes, Stacy, I know, I'm gonna get it back together." She said, "Cuz, you understand, time's running out." I said, "Yeah, baby, I love you. Thank you." Month later, 3 months later, I get a phone call on a Sunday morning, and it's her mother. I'm watching the Giants play. Don't bother me when I'm watching the Giants play. She said, you sitting down? I said, yeah, kind of. She said, I have to tell you something. I said, what's that? She said, Stacy died last night. I stopped playing with her. She said, Stacy died last night. She had a brain aneurysm. She got up to a podium with the church and to recite a poem by Maya Angelou to her mother. She turned to her mother and said, Mommy, I love you. She turned back to the podium. She dropped dead. She had 33 years clean. And I immediately said, God, why her? And why not me? The funeral she had, you couldn't even hold in this room. That's how respected she was in this fellowship.